How to make your podcast part of your listeners' routine. You know, it's hard enough to start a podcast and it's hard enough to continue sharing. So if you're not at that point yet, go back to that stage and keep sharing and get the momentum going. But once you are there, how do you make it so that you're part of a routine? Like, how do you make it so people actually tune into your podcast on an ongoing basis? If you release an episode every week, how do you make sure that they're listening to you every week or every day or whatever your release schedule is? Today, I'm sharing a clip from a conversation I had with Justin, who is a really successful podcaster. He's got over 2 million downloads on his podcast. He's been podcasting for over 4 years, and he shared some advice with us today. So I'll share that clip with you now. This channel is sponsored by TubeBuddy. If you create YouTube videos and you do not have TubeBuddy, there's a link in the description to download it and get a free 30-day trial on the premium plan so you can get all the extra perks, and then it bumps you down to the free plan and has a ton of value. I've been using it for years, and I think most YouTubers have it installed. So if you don't have it already installed, use the link in the description. You get 30 days free, and they're sponsoring this video. So thanks, TubeBuddy. So what do you think would be some secret sauce that you're doing that's different than the average podcaster that you feel like maybe some other established podcasters could utilize to help them grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, and I kind of touched on it earlier, is consistency is key. But I want to talk about the reason you do that, right? Like when you talk about like going live on Facebook, you can go live anytime and people will show up if they're scrolling and they'll find you and they'll tune in, right? Podcasts don't work that way. Like it doesn't usually just randomly pop up and be like, I'm live now, come listen. So the key is to show up at the same time every single week in the same way and give your audience what they're expecting. And the thing that I say is like, look, podcast listeners are creatures of habit. And so we have to understand that they will literally put you into their routine. It's not even necessarily they love your show. Like, let's get out of our ego a little bit. It's not always that they love your show. It's that you become part of the routine, whether they're listening to you on the Tuesday when they work out, or Tuesday in their commute to work, or Friday when they're washing the dishes or whatever. You become part of the routine. If you're not there when that routine pops up, they're going to go find another show to listen to. And again, let's remove the ego. Your show's probably not as good as the next show they're going to find, so they're not coming back, right? So show up for them, continue to add value with what they want and what they need. And what's going to happen is you're going to have that organic growth. The number one way to grow your show is still word of mouth. So going out and making sure that the people that are listening to your show are telling their friends. And so one thing I always say is try really hard to be the third podcast they mention. So why the third podcast, right? Everybody who's podcast listeners listen to multiple. It's just the facts. And so everybody listens to Joe Rogan. That's the reality. Like, it's insane how many people listen to that guy. A ton of people listen to like a Gary Vee or a Lewis Howes or something like that. So they're going to say the first two that they listen to, and the person they're saying this to also listens to them. And the third one is they go, okay, well, I also listen to the Growth Now movement. And the person goes, what's the Growth Now movement? And they go, it's the show hosted by this guy named Justin. You should really check it out. It's great. And that person's going to go check it out. So always be the third person that they mention. And you do that, again, by delivering to your audience what they expect, what they need. And you do that by listening to the feedback that you're getting versus continuously trying to push what it is you want to push.
All right, so the number one way to get into people's routine is to be on a routine. You've got to be consistent with your release schedule. You got to show up the same way and the same time every time. And if you skip that and you miss that, he shared that people will then go and find alternative podcasts. And it's pretty easy to be like, oh, well, he didn't show up today. Let me find something to replace that. And then there's going to be somebody who is better than you that they'll find. And then you're now kicked out of the routine potentially. Especially if you do that enough times, you could be knocked out of the routine. If you'd like to check out the full interview with Justin, the link is in the description. If you're interested in starting a podcast, I host a weekly meetup for influencers. So if you're interested in tuning into that, Justin actually guest spoke there and shared some of his secret sauce in an intimate setting before coming on as a podcast on the show. So in the meetup, we have more intimate setting and we get some deeper dive informations than what we actually get on this podcast. I'm curious, what are some ideas you have to help your podcast get put into the routine of your listeners? We gave a couple ideas in this video, but I'm sure there's a lot more out there. So what are some ideas that you have that can get your podcast or other podcasts into the routine of the listeners? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for tuning in today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks.